Someone's being very loud today and very needy. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you the Q3 reading recap. So this video is all about my reading between the months of July and September. So we are going to be running through all the books I've managed to read and the reading stats associated. And make sure you check out my other reading wrap-ups for 2025 down in the comments or up in the description. But let's jump straight in to my stats. So I'll just turn myself over here so you can see everything up here. And I have everything written out just here in front of me. So for the third quarter, I have managed to read 13 books, which surprisingly is actually the same amount of books I read in Q2. We had a total of 3,939 pages. That does include the books that I read via audiobook. I didn't DNF anything, and the average book length was about 303 pages. I did read for 22 days, and my average pages per day read is 179.5. I only had one author I'd read from before, which meant I had 12 new to me authors. Once again, majority of these books were backlist books, so they were from 2023 or earlier, and that was 12 of them. And only one was from 2024. We didn't have any that were published this year. I did start 4 new series, and I finalized, caught up, finished 1 series. On a side note, I've actually been watching a few series tracker videos, and I have been considering doing something similar. So let me know down in the comments if that is something that you would like to see. My average star rating across the quarter was 3.69, and I only had 3-star and 4-star reads. I had 4 3-star and 9 4-star, so this was definitely a good reading quarter. 7 of the books I read were via audiobook. 3 of them were physical books. 3 were also ebooks. I didn't have any immersion or mixed reads this quarter. My genres consisted of fantasy, where I had 2 books, romance, where I had 5, business, so non-fiction, where I had 2, self-help, also non-fiction, I had 2, dark romance, I had 1, and romantasy, I had 1. Only one of these books were from my physical TBR, and 2 of them I read via Kindle, which means that 10 books come through my library, and that does include Libby. I'm so pleased with my Goodreads goal for this month. I am at 37 of 25 books, so I have blown my goal out of the water. I do have a bit of a stretch goal, a bit of a secret unofficial stretch goal, and I'm kind of wanting to get to 50 books, because since I have been utilizing Goodreads, I have not managed to read 50 books. I think the closest I got was in the mid to late 40s. On the other hand, from my plan to pan goals, I'll have that video linked up in the cards and down in the description, I still have not read or completed any of those reads, which is a bit of a disappointment. But with the stats out of the way rather quickly, actually, let's roll into the details about each book that I managed to read. First up, we had In Every Generation by Kendare Blake. I'll have a picture of it up here. I did physically read it, but I had borrowed it from my library. This book is also the read I had from my Relax and Readathon vlog, which I'll have linked up in the cards and down in the description. I did give this 4 stars, and it is a continuation story set in the Buffyverse. The story is set in New Sunnydale, which is built on the ruins of the old Sunnydale. After the Slayers are attacked and possibly killed at a Slayer convention, Frankie Rosenberg, who is Willow's daughter, becomes the new Slayer. The story follows Frankie and essentially a new set of Scoobies, while they try to discover what happened to the Slayers and defeat the new big bad, all the while trying to transition sweet, mild, Willow-esque Frankie into the new Slayer. I'd say that the book is structured in a way that it almost feels like a season. It's broken down into different parts and they almost feel like defined episodes, each with their own little bad, with the big bad coming to the forefront of the plot at the end. Plus there is a cliffhanger to get you to go on to the rest of the series. A few of the reviews on Goodreads suggest that it feels a lot like fan fiction, and I would agree with that sentiment. And overall, I don't have a problem with that, except for the fact that some of the original characters do feel a lot OOC, out of character. Plus, there's definitely a lot of Easter eggs and references to the original series that at times feel forced to create the nostalgia rather than nicely integrated into the story. I'm definitely going to be continuing with this series, and I'm very intrigued to see if this is kind of the direction that the new reboot series will go in, or if it will go in a different direction. I then read Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I also gave this one a 4-star. Though to note, I saw the movie and absolutely adored it, so I did assume that this would be an automatic 5-star read for me, because as they say, the book is always better, right? Though it just didn't make it to the 5-star I anticipated, I did really enjoy the story. There were just aspects that were altered to make it flow better as a movie, and I think that really added to the story, where the original almost slowed down the plot or pulled me from the story a bit. Though I will say there were obviously other sections and other characters and other relationships that were definitely developed more fully within the book, which I did really enjoy. I think the main disappointment for me was a lot of the one-liners or the hard-hitting dialogue from the movie actually isn't how it is said or goes down in the book. Then I read Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ by Daniel Goleman. This was also a 4-star. It was first published back in 2006, and it's definitely a book of its time, a book that is set at the beginning of what I'm just going to dub the EQ revolution. Though really the sentiment and the concepts discussed are the same now as they were then. It's definitely worth a read, especially for anyone who holds a leadership position. Then we had A Monk's Guide to a Clean House and Mind by, I am not actually going to butcher the name, so you'll see it down here. This was only a 3-star for me. I did find a lot of the concepts and the habits and the suggestions discussed really interesting, and they definitely can be utilized in everyday life. But it is worth noting, as it says in the title, this book is definitely from the perspective of an active monk. So though it doesn't come across too religious or preachy, their lifestyle is definitely a lot different than what mine is. And the whole book is obviously framed around the mindset of said monk. It definitely does give you a lot of insight into that world that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Then we had How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis. This, on the other hand, was a 4-star read. And it's also part of my adventure weekend vlog, which I'll have linked up in the cards and down in the description. This is written and structured with neurodivergence in mind. And I absolutely love the fact that the book could be read differently depending on your needs and your reading style. It definitely gave a lot of good systems that may be worth implementing into your life, including a concept that so simple might seem a little unheard of, but if you have issues with using a space for dumping of objects, for example, or you always put something in a space that isn't its home, maybe consider making that its home. Or, for example, if you have a dirty clothes chair, rather than continuing to pile things up on that chair or try to force yourself to then take it to a basket in a different location, put a basket on top of the chair. Because at the end of the day, that is the space you will tend to go to, and it's the easiest way is just to let you go there. So why not make that space work rather than trying to change yourself? So I really did love that concept and discussion within the book. Also, part of my weekend adventure vlog, I read One Last Summer by Kate Spencer. This was also a 4-star for me. And before reading this, I actually thought I didn't like contemporary romance. If somebody said to me, "Do you like contemporary romance?" I would have said no. Then I read this book and realized I might have been mistaken. I definitely enjoyed the flow of the plot, the character development, and the writing style. And in fact, I would read more from Kate Spencer. Also part of my weekend adventure vlog, I had Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. This is also 4 stars, and honestly, I thought I was going to DNF it in the beginning of the book. The writing style was really whimsical and I guess leaning towards literary, which I wasn't overly enjoying. Then we got into the crutch of the story and my opinion definitely changed. It was a lot darker than I thought, and the mystery whodunit element was something I really enjoyed. I am looking forward to continuing on with this series, but I guess it depends on how the plot of each book goes, considering the ending of the first book, to whether I'll be continuing with the series in the long run. Then I read Losers Part 2 by Harley Laroux. This was a 4-star read and is actually part of the buddy read vlog I completed with Jess from Smut and Stockinette. I'll have that video linked up in the cards and down in the description. I do go quite deep into my thoughts and feelings regarding the book in that video, but I'll just say here I enjoyed parts of this more than the first book, especially the relationship development, but I didn't enjoy how some really serious situations and I guess the conflicts of the book were just brushed over. We would go from having a chapter that ends on a near-death experience, and then the next chapter they're just starting having coffee, like nothing's been done, they've just swept it under the rug. And in the end, I did feel that the conclusion of the main conflict was quite lackluster. Though I did enjoy Harley Laroux's writing style and would look to read more within their backlist. I then read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I did give this 3 stars, and I read it as part of a buddy read with my local book club. And this was the first Ali Hazelwood book that I've ever read. And I guess I was expecting it to be a lot more spice than actually it had in it. But that's not a bad thing. It just is a a statement of fact. While reading it, there were certain parts I did think were leaning the book as a whole towards 4 stars. But in the end, I felt like it went a bit longer than necessary, and I'm all for this could be resolved with communication, miscommunication subplot, but this just started to get a little bit like, how do you expect to have a relationship if you never actually talk to each other? But this did start to become a little bit far-fetched for me. I originally read that it was Raylo coded, and I actually don't really agree with that comment, except for the fact that the main character, Adam, he is obviously the spitting image of Adam Driver. So I think from the perspective of if this was being made into a movie, that Adam Driver could 100% play this character, and really the actor who plays Ray could play the other character because the other character's got dark hair. That is essentially it. I didn't feel that any of the characterizations throughout the book really had that Raylo feel to it. Though in saying that, I'm not a huge reader of Raylo fan fiction, so definitely down in the comments, let me know what you think of that characterization. And I will be reading more from Ali Hazelwood in the future. Then we had Where There's a Will by Anna Sparrows. This was the final book I read for my reading adventure vlog, and it was a 3-star and a bit of a flat end to that vlog. It is set in Australia, but really it could also be set in any westernized generic coastal city. Nothing really felt Australian. This is an MM romance, and the 2 main male characters really had no red flags. As a couple, they fit perfectly together. I think the only thing that could have been seen as a bit of a pink flag, I guess, would be the age gap. But really, it wasn't that big of a deal. And there was no real conflict within the relationship. All the conflict that affected the characters happened from outside force. In saying that though, apart from the main catalyst that creates the plot of the book, which was handled very well and does hold a lot of emotion, all other conflicts really felt anticlimactic, even when really there was quite a lot at stake. And the character that was homophobic really felt like that aspect of their personality was just kind of tacked on, and more about making that character seem more like a villain than anything that actually felt real or like it was going to become a major part of the conflict, which is especially true with the way it was wrapped up in a cute little bow by the end of the book. I then read a sapphic romantasy, Her Rival Dragon Mate by Arizona Tape. This was also 3 stars. It was a very quick read, very predictable, one night stand to fated mates story. I did enjoy it, and I would continue reading within this series. I then read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Powerful Lessons in Personal Change by Stephen R. Covey. This was also 4 stars. I did listen to this via audiobook, which was actually narrated by the author. And I think that gave it a real sense of authenticity and almost made it feel like you were having a conversation with the author rather than listening or reading their book. However, I don't know if this is an issue with the book overall or just an issue with the fact that I can't physically see each chapter, but it was hard at times to understand actually what the 7 habits were, as the chapters really flowed into each other and it wasn't defined in a way of like habit 1 XYZ blah 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 blah, habit 2 XYZ blah 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 blah. It was almost part of a flowing conversation. So though I did get eventually, once I started working out how the book was structured, what the habits were, I would have to go and pull up a cute little list, and I'll put one up here just so you can see that specifically dot points what each of the 7 habits are. Although it is an older book, it is definitely worth the read. And I actually got quite a lot from the concepts and the habits that were discussed, including a greater knowledge on the win-win element and also about people's buckets and filling others' buckets. And finally, I have Love and Other Scores by Abra Presler. This is also a buddy read that I'm doing with Jess from Smut and Stockinette, but that video won't be coming out until around November. This one was also 4 stars for me, and it is an LGBT MM romance. It's set in Australia and it focuses on the Australian Open. So we have Noah, who is an Australian bartender, and Gabrielle, who is a French professional tennis player. I think unlike Where There's a Will, you can definitely feel the cultural difference between each character's chapter. It is a dual point of view story, and as you change between each character's perspective, you can definitely feel the cultural difference between the characters. And I especially like the way that Noah naturally uses Australian slang and Australian terms within his dialogue, which Gabby doesn't always understand. And then it's explained in a way that feels natural for the story, but also gives the reader the knowledge of what that term means. Though a lot of them I didn't realize, others didn't use. For example, mind the fingers. Gabby isn't sure what Noah means when he hands over a donut and says mind the fingers, but that essentially means sorry for touching your food with fingers. And I didn't realize that other places maybe don't use similar terms. And I'm especially looking forward to seeing Jess's thoughts and feelings in her vlog on this book. So it's definitely been a fantastic reading quarter for me with a lot of 4-star reads. Hopefully we continue that on into the 4th and final quarter of the year. But until then, I'm Verity. This was my 3rd quarter reading wrap up. And now to the outro.